Good morning. It is a good morning. Not quite like yesterday morning. I say that because yesterday morning was the morning just after the lock-in. And I talked to a couple of the guys that were there. Had a great moment, DJ. There were we had some visitors in from kids, a couple of 18-year-olds, one 17-year-old. We were playing basketball. And it's the first time I ever heard in my life a moment where it says, that old man just blocked your shot. There had been years ago that would have offended me. But as I got out of bed yesterday morning and tried to stand upright, I'm glad I got up this morning. And you notice I came up, I didn't hold on to the handrail. I made it up the stairs fine. So it is good to be with you this morning. And it's really good. There's several that are visiting family, and this is that time of year when family come into town. It's always good to have those of you visiting with us. We encourage you to stay around a few moments, as always, and give us a chance to greet you. The lesson this morning is different than the original one intended because of a series of events last week. I was awakened by a text from my dear friend earlier this week of a situation that occurred in Charlotte that many of us are aware of, the tragic loss of life of the young middle school young man. It's rare that I've ever been in a situation like that and see that on the news and immediately realize that it's not someone I don't know. Many of you know the individual driving the vehicle was a dear friend of us, a minister at the Archdale Church of Christ, Brother Russ McCullough. I called Russ that morning, and it's been many years since I have heard the angst, just the lost sense of why in the world has this event occurred. He answered the phone in tears. And when you feel the struggle, the stress that an individual is going through of an event that they had absolutely no control over since then, as has been acknowledged in an article, there's no legal action against Russ. It was an accident. It was something, there was no way in the world he could have changed. Although in his heart and mind, he wishes there's some way it could be changed. That's why the thoughts this morning. That's why the reading from Job by DJ. Why me, Lord? When you think of some of the questions that come up as a result of this, what have I done to deserve this? Now, that's anybody that's had any experience realizes, and know many of them, that nothing triggered this. There was no reason behind this. The really dire situation I found out even since then is that now there have been charges in reference to a couple of the friends of the individual who passed. Some altercation, something occurred that triggered this person's flight, running from the event that caused this instantaneous horrific accident. But it's, what have I done to deserve this? Or why did God let this happen? Which is one of the more powerful questions that a lot of times those who are opponents to faith and religion ask. What kind of God would do this? And he didn't do this, but he did allow this. Why am I being punished? And if there was one thing, as I mentioned in class this morning, we were talking about the first part of James where it says, count it all joy, my brothers, when you fall into various trials. And I knew in the conversation that we had briefly the other morning, just the angst in Russ's voice, the struggle to come to any kind of reasoning or any kind of sense of this entire event. In a moment, we're going to look at another person that had a series of events, and I don't know that there's anything that you could say would pale in comparison to anything that happened even this last week or events that you personally have experienced, because I know even this morning as we talk about this, there's quite possibly some similar experience in your life this is kind of taking you back to. But the first, I want to look at the three parts of this word. Why me, Lord? Why? Which is a valid question. Because we're a curious lot. We want answers. We want to try to figure things out. What in the world? Because if we can figure it out somehow, some way that provides, if I can understand it, then it's not going to hurt as much. It's not going to be as difficult to deal with. There's the natural consequence of sin that occurs in our lives. Genesis 2. You see, Adam and Eve have been warned. You make a bad choice, you're going to be in trouble. And we understand that. God forbid that's one of the answers in this case. Some individuals evidently were either mistreating or doing something they shouldn't be doing, and it precipitated a horrible result. 1 Corinthians 15:22, I think, as Paul writes back to the church there, he makes this little observation, and I hope, for as in Adam all die, even so in Christ shall all be made alive. Is it appointed to man, the writer says, and wants to die, and after that, the judgment. There is an inevitable result. See, we were born to die. We weren't born with the intent of living physically forever. Now, we were born with God's intent to live forever in the existence beyond this realm. One of the other passages we read in James this morning was, what is man? But his life is but a vapor. And it's episodes like last week that, in some kind of a shocking, startling way, remind us, man, life is so precious. But when you think of the fact that God allowed us to make the choices that we make, look at 1 Peter 4. 1 Peter 4, beginning about verse 15. 4. But let none of you suffer as a murderer, a thief, an evildoer, or as a busybody in other people's matters. Yet if anyone suffers as a Christian, let him not be ashamed, but let him glorify God in this matter. He says suffering can be the result of the poor choices that we make. But did you notice what he also said? You can suffer for being right just as easily as you can suffer for being wrong. See, we live in that world, and I always think of this in reference to, and one of the things I did better the other morning in talking to Russ is I was just listening. I've gotten better at that, at least in some occurrences. Because it's not the moment sometimes just, well, here's the reason, or here's what God's. But as we look back and look into God's will, Paul, I believe, by inspiration of the Spirit, started out by telling us in the beginning we're all sinners. That's what he starts Roman letter with. Nobody's righteous. We're all on our own merits lost. We can be like Abraham when he goes into 4 and 5, and he talks about we can make a choice to serve God, but even in those choices, it doesn't immediately release us from the opportunity to struggle. He says we've got to give ourselves up first. See, the first step in getting to a place where the world starts making sense is found in Romans chapter 6. I'm going to get here to 8 in a minute. I want to kind of set the stage. Because in Romans 6 is where he says, for as many of you as have been buried with Christ, you have taken yourself and you have immersed yourself into Christ, and it's no longer I who live, but he who lives in me. Now, I'm going to say, I think in a spiritual sense, he's saying, I can disconnect myself from some of the pain when I realize I've totally given myself to God. And then in Romans 8, he shares the struggle that exists in the world. For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that shall be revealed in us. Now does it help to know that it's going to get better? Okay, I'm asking you a question. You can respond to this, by the way. Does it help to know that it's going to get better? Amen. Oh, my word. Does it not? If this was it, if this, our earthly experience was it, and I've had some, and continue to be blessed with incredible experiences here on the face of the earth and opportunities. But I've also had some incredible struggles, and will continue, I'm sure, as long if I live long enough, I'll have them again. And if this is it, oh, folks, there are so many times that I really feel for people who don't believe in God. Because I want to just go and say, if this is all you're going to get to do, I'm sorry. But it's not. That's what he says in Romans 8. For the earnest expectation of the creation eagerly waits for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly. If God had asked me, or you, do you want to struggle while you're here? Nope. Not my idea how it should work. Said it wasn't willingly. You see, Adam's choice, now hear me clearly in this, Adam's choice made our choice for us. Now, I'm not talking about inherited depravity. I'm not talking about sinfulness. I'm talking about the fact that we still, because Adam got to make a choice, we get to make a choice. That's what he's talking about here. Because the creation itself will be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. I appreciate Olean reminding of us this morning in that song. Redeemed, I'm better off. And I'm in a spot where I can make a difference, not only in my own experience, but in the experiences of others. Why? Well, why is because God, from the beginning of time, said it's going to be difficult to live here. Remember the exit exam from Eden? Ground's not going to work as good. You're going to have pain and childbirth. There's a whole list of things that he tells them as they come out. It's not going to be like it was. Why do we struggle? Sin. And I knew exactly who was on the corner of that moment in Charlotte earlier this week, and it was Satan, the prince of the power of the air. So we need to learn who to blame when things go wrong. Not God, Satan. Number two, me. See, that's the thing. Why me? It's not fair. I didn't do anything. I had no intent. If I could have stopped, if it would have been within my power for that event not to occur, it would have never happened. Job. Let me give you a quick look at Job 1. We're just going to read. Here's your day. A messenger came to Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the donkeys feeding besides them. When the Sabeans raided them, took them away. Indeed, they were killed, the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. Verse number 18. While he was still speaking, another also came and said, your sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house, and suddenly a great wind came from across the wilderness, struck the four corners of the house, and it fell on the young people, and they are dead. And I alone have escaped to tell you. Chapter 2, verses 1 through 10. Again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. And the Lord said to Satan, where do you come from? From where do you come? So Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro on the earth, and from walking back and forth on it. I just want to remind you of something. This is a historical event that happens every day. He's still walking. Then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? That there's none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears God, shuns evil. Still he holds fast to his integrity, although you incited me against him to destroy him without cause. So Satan answered the Lord and said, skin for sin. Yes, all that a man has he will give for his life. But stretch out your hand now and touch his bone and his flesh. He will surely curse you to your face. And the Lord said to Satan, behold, he is in your hand, but spare his life. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord, struck Job with painful boils from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. And he took for himself a potsherd with which to scrape himself while he sat in the midst of ashes. Then he said to his wife, do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die. But he said, do you speak as one of the foolish women speaks? Shall we indeed accept good from God, and shall we not accept adversity? And then a passage in Scripture that blows my mind. In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. And then I know you got a little nervous here. Wait a minute, chapter 3 through 42:6. Can't read all that today. That's how much time God shows. Here's what friends do when you're struggling. We don't have time to look into that whole thing. David, Psalm 55. Psalm 55, 1 through 7. Listen to David's heart. Give ear to my prayer, O God. Do not hide yourself from my supplication. Attend to me and hear me. I am restless in my complaint and moan noisily because of the voice of the enemy, because of the oppression of the wicked. For they bring me down trouble upon me, and in wrath they hate me. My heart is severely pained within me, and the terrors of death have fallen upon me. Fearfulness and trembling have come upon me, and horror has overwhelmed me. So I said, oh, that I had wings like a dove. I would fly and be at rest. Indeed, I would wander far off and remain in the wilderness. I would hasten my escape from the windy storm and tempest. Have you ever just wanted to go somewhere else? That's where David was. He said, I don't want to be where I am. Peter sums up what we see here in John 1, Matthew 6, Luke 22. Brett mentioned the Gethsemane. He was bruised for our iniquities. By his stripes we are healed. The writer in Peter says that he suffered for us. The words that he spoke, oh Father, if There's some of the ways, let this cup pass, but not my will, but yours be done. 2 Timothy 3:12, Romans 8:16 through 18 talks about that all who live godly, that's what 2 Timothy 3:12 says, all who live godly in Christ Jesus shall suffer and struggle. Lord, why me? That's who we go to. We go to the Lord. Two quick thoughts. His desire, He wants all to be saved. He's not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to newness of life. He will always provide what we need. Drew and Thaddeus and Levi, late Friday night, early Saturday morning combined, looked at the passages from Joshua 1, 2 Timothy 2, talking about that we start strong, stay strong, and finish strong. And the key in that is one major promise in the middle of all of those. In Joshua, it is, fear not, because I am with you. I will not leave you no matter what happens to you. And it is that promise that lends always. All things work together for good to those who love the Lord and are called according to His purpose. Romans 8:28. Not some. And it's when we get to that point, we mentioned in class this morning, it is getting to the place where we trust God absolutely. Because everything that happens then comes in under a great big umbrella of God is allowing this. Some of which He prompts, some of which He simply allows. It's hard to imagine the God who, when Satan walks in and asks about one of us, that He says, you're going to do whatever you want to him. But you notice that's what we hear Him say, but that's not what He said. Do whatever you can, touch his flesh, but not his life. Now I know, because we're human. Our thought is, well, there are probably moments in Job's life he said, well, just go ahead and take me out. I can't imagine being so excruciatingly in pain that I'd take a clay pot and scrape it across my body for relief. Can't. But what God says is, I'm still in control and I'm going to deliver you, because your life is going to speak volumes. Job's life today, in all this, he did not sin. See, that promise I just mentioned, Romans 8:28. All things work together for good to those that love the Lord. Why? Well, Matthew 5:45 is the passage in the middle of the Sermon on the Mount where God says, I send the rain on the just and the unjust. That also means the storm. God's no respecter of persons. And the beauty of and the power of why me, Lord, is He knows at a level no one else knows in our lives what we're both capable of and what we'll shout to the praise of His glory when we live our lives faithful to Him no matter what happens. Russ mentioned one other thing the other morning. He said, my prayer for this is an open door into the families who have been impacted. You see, most likely he'd been encouraged not to reach out to this family, but he already did. See, what happens when we show I'm going to be God's person no matter the situation. The same God who blesses also builds. And that's what happens. Is that the answer? Well, that's not. That doesn't mean well, that's the reason this happened. But let me share this with you. If we struggle with that thought process, here is an opportunity Don't know how it's going to come out. Don't know how it's all going to break out. But I'm going to use this bad situation to make God look good. That's what glorification is. It's an opportunity for me to say, God, and there was a phrase, and I thought I marked it. Only remind me of the number of the song. It was the second one that you sang. 733. Yeah. The poor and them that mourn, the faint and overborne, sin-sick and sorrow-worn, the wayward and the lost, by restless passions tossed, with us the word to share, with us reproach to dare, the newborn souls whose days were claimed from error's ways. All of those, every moment. There's an opportunity when something goes wrong to show how this is how we make God's right. Why not me, Lord? Use me in a way to say, I'm going to live faithful to you no matter what happens. If we can help anyone this morning, there may be some specific need that you have that you wish to express before God. There may be some praise moment in your life you want to share. There may be some specific need that you need the prayers of your brothers and sisters in this congregation. That's why elders are available to you both here and even in private if you need them as we stand and sing this song.